This episode of the Out of Bounds podcast is sponsored by Fisher Skis, and you can visit them at www.fishersports.com. Hello. My name's Adam. This is the Out of Bounds podcast, and today we have a wonderful episode for you with Todd Offenbacher, Stein Retzloff, and we talked about all kinds of stuff. Talked about, dude, can we just talk about for a really quick second how jacked Todd used to be? Maybe Joe will be nice. I don't know. Maybe Ethan will be nice and put up an image of what Todd used to look like. Because holy shit. That's like Liver King level stuff. But in all seriousness, great conversation. These guys are great. And keep an eye out for the crux. Before we jump into the episode today, we have a few quick messages from our partners, as well as some other stuff. So, first things first, we got to pay the bills. Deuter is for powder hounds, and they make the best bags on planet Earth. Ski packs, day packs, they even make Avi bags. I mean, they literally make everything when it comes to outdoor active style packs, as well as some great luggage options, which, if you've been listening to the show, you know are one of my favorite luggage options in the world in the Aviant series. Freerider Pro 34 Plus. This is my favorite bag. I find it extremely comfortable. This is a thing that I feel like people don't talk about enough. Obviously, the carry stuff is really great. It has a roll top. Okay, great. The way that the waist strap fits is so perfect. Like, it's sized well. It sits nicely on your little love handles, and it allows you to move freely and comfortably in the mountains, which is a huge thing. It's a huge benefit. It also has a separate storage container for all of your Avi gear, so that is super easy to access. That's something you don't want to fuck around with, and you want to be ready as soon as humanly possible if you ever have to use your gear, okay? Obviously, we don't want to, but if you have to, you want things to be as efficient as possible. Like I mentioned before, a lot of easy ways to carry a snowboard, snowshoes, skis, obviously, whatever you need to in this pack. They're pushing this thing hard, and it's for a good reason. The thing is phenomenal. I'm a huge fan. Obviously, duffels and all this stuff. Ethan's going on vacation, so he thinks he can just show a bunch of duffels on the screen right now. Anyway, go to Deuter.com, Deuter. It is Deuter, not Deuter, in case you were wondering. Go to Deuter.com and get yourself a new pack today and let them know that we sent you. Next, I'm going skiing tomorrow, and I'm going to Cannon. Cannon is by far my favorite place to ski in New England. The terrain is great. It's challenging terrain. 2, by far the most beautiful place to ski in New England. Like, lift access, you look out, and it's just like the presidentials in the background. It's insane. No other place do you get a view like this right off the front side. And also, look at this vertical drop, 2180, okay? Longest run, 2.3 miles. The vertical drop on this place is crazy. Like, skiing tramway all the way down, like going tramway to DJ's tramline is insane. It's so much fun, especially when the snow is down. Looks like we've got some good weather finally coming on the horizon, so go get a ticket ahead of time, plan ahead, go to cannonmt.com and let's go skiing. Hit me up. I told you we have other stuff going on, but we don't. I lied to you so that you would listen to the ads. So now what? Enjoy the episode with Stein and Todd. Stein, Todd, why don't you guys introduce yourself, tell people a little bit about yourself, and then we can go from there. Stein, why don't you take it first?
Okay. Well, I'm Stein Retzloff from Lake Tahoe, California, and I had the sincere pleasure of meeting Mr. Todd Offenbacher. Actually, the first time I met Todd was in Antarctica in 2017. And he's like one of the veteran mountain guides, ski guides, has one of the best presentations on the whole boat. And he was like kind of like this, kind of like a mythical figure in the whole ordeal. So I didn't really have much time to talk to him. But then fast forward a year and a half later in 2019, we were in Svalbard, Norway. And we were on these like skiing sailboats. We live on a sailboat, and Todd and I had the great pleasure on one of the trips sharing a bed. and, and for like an 8-day trip, and really got to learn more about Todd. And we went skiing together and just learning more about like what he does in the community and like his whole past and everything. And it really, I mean, for me, I'm more of a skier, not so much a rock climber, but like learning more about Todd and Todd taking me out and doing these different a multi-pitch day, which is a story for another time. But Todd really like opened my eyes to a lot of work that he's done and like the impact and purpose and everything that he's done within this community. So that was like super inspiring for me, and also learning more about documentary film work and like really building those skills. And when the pandemic hit, it seemed like a perfect opportunity to learn more about Todd and do like a local story and share a narrative. I'm born and raised here in North Lake Tahoe. South Lake's a different country, but we go down there every now and then. But Todd's developed an entire climbing community, and so honestly, we met in bipolar areas actually, so it was kind of cool.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely connected, from the beginning. It was cool just for me to meet someone, how old were you, Stein, when we met then?
2017 or 19?
17.
Like 22 or 23, I think.
Yeah. So I met Stein. He was pretty young, and him and another guy, Eric, showed up on the trip to shoot some video, do some guiding, and I personally just find myself drawn to people that just kind of have that ability, that kind of take charge of just being on a trip and saying, I'm going to do whatever needs to be done. I'm going to be that person that volunteers. I'm going to be that person that sees someone needs help. I'm going to step in and help them. And I saw that in Stein and Eric, just kind of being those guys that were new and, we're the rookies on the trip, right? So you get some hazing and that sort of stuff, but they just were constantly helping with every and anything they could. So we kind of hit it off. But I'd been doing those trips with Ice Axe expeditions for maybe 12 years now, down to Antarctica, up to Norway, to Greenland, to Svalbard, where the polar bears are, ski guiding. And I worked for almost 23 years as a TV host for Outside Television. It used to be Resort Sports Network, and then Outside Television. And then I'm the creator and host of the Tahoe Adventure Film Festival. And I've been a climber, I'd say an adventure climber for probably, I don't know, maybe 35 years now, climbing in Yosemite, lots of El Capitan routes, a few times taking disabled people up El Capitan, then traveling the world to do kind of big wall first ascents back maybe 20 years ago. That was a big passion of mine, going with friends over to Pakistan and Peru and China and some of these more remote places in the big mountains, and putting up new routes to more recently, in the last, 15 years, putting up a lot of more moderate routes here in the Lake Tahoe area and beyond. I've put up routes over in Thailand and sport climbs there and that sort of thing. But probably the most recent effort in climbing, aside from just my own personal climbing, which, whatever, has been driven towards trying to develop like really moderate, even easy routes, a couple hard ones, not that many, but routes that are just really inclusive for people that are either getting into climbing or people that are, just moderate climbers that want to do safe, well-protected climbs that are easy at the top with nice hooks at the top. I don't know how much your audience or yourself knows about climbing, but a lot of times in climbing, the distance between protection, that is where you flip into something or put a piece of gear to catch you in the event that you should fall, can be big distances. So the further the distance, the further the fall is going to be that you take. So the idea of, putting up routes that just are really safe, that the fall potential's very short and just the risk is somewhat reduced, has been really appealing and really well received in the community.
Yeah, no. And to answer your question, I know next to nothing about climbing. It is actually the thing that scares me the most of all the outdoor sports. I think it terrifies me, but I think it's because there's not often a very easy way to get into it. And the information it seems like it's hard to get to. Like, I don't know, you go and you watch these videos, or like you go out with a friend, and it's just like, there's so much to take in. And I guess like for me, like mountain biking, there's like two camps, it seems like, in the summer, right? For skiers. And it's like
Yep.
people are climbers or people are mountain bikers, right? And I guess there's some people that like to run somewhere in between that like strange range there. But it's mountain biking is it's complicated. There's a lot that goes into it, but it like that feels very easy and very natural for me to get into and understand. But climbing is like, I still don't get it. No matter how hard every year I try and I try to pick up something new. And like, I don't know, I started bouldering a couple of years ago, but I don't know shit about anything when it comes to climbing, you know, like it's
Right.
so overwhelming to me.
Yeah. I can
Me
understand
too.
that.
Yeah.
I can understand. I mean, one thing you have in climbing is you have to have a partner.
Yeah.
And then if you're new at climbing, then you have to have a partner that kind of knows all those things that are foreign and mysterious to you, right? They've got to know how to get the rope to the top and back down. They need to know how to do it safely. They need to know how to protect, how to, if the gear is safe or is not safe, all these things. If you're doing a multi-pitch, how we're going to get down from here, how do we get to the base? Where does this climb go? There's a lot to it. So there's that compared to say mountain biking. You can just grab your mountain bike and start exploring trails. And if you go too far, you just turn around and ride back. But if you start climbing up, and you get 20 feet out from a piece of protection and you can't make the move and you can't down climb, you're in a pretty, precarious situation in that. So I get it.
It's hard. It's hard, man. I had this argument a few weeks ago with a friend. He was telling me that he's terrified of mountain biking and he thinks that mountain biking it's 20 times more dangerous than going climbing. And I'm like, you're an insane person. Like you choose your adventure on a bike a little more, right? There's like, and I guess you do in climbing too, but it seems, I don't know, the risk is mitigated by what you're comfortable doing, especially if you like aren't one of those just go out and just huck yourself type people. Right. And in that case, like it seems like those people hardly ever get hurt anyway. Like it seems like they're always like they bounce right back up and everything's fine, even if it goes poorly. But it's terrifying to me.
Well, yeah, you have to come out and we'll try to make it easy. That's something a good guide could do, is take someone and give them the good experience where there's not as much exposure. The climbing's well within your physical ability. Explain it well. Yeah. Remove some of that mystery. Without obviously mountain biking, you're getting in great cardio shape potentially. Riding up a mountain. Whereas climbing, you definitely learn a lot of good technical skills that I like to then. Some of my favorite skiing is when you can kind of take some of those technical skills from climbing and transfer them over. Right. Climbing some steep couloir or whatever it might be, rappelling into a couloir. I mean, all the clients always want to, can we rappel into something?
Yeah.
Say, okay, yeah, we'll rappel into something. We won't need to, but we'll do it because everybody wants to use their harness and their ice screws and all that stuff. So
that's the thing, of course, like that's the thing that interests me the most. And that's why I was like, oh, maybe I should start playing with this idea a little bit more, is because like the ability to connect it with skiing is probably the most exciting thing to me. At least, like, I don't know, for some reason it seems like you have 50% of it down. You know what I mean? Like you have the skiing part down, sort of. And then like the climbing part, you just figure out after, like, I don't know, like it seems like it's easier to go together.
Yeah. And like these trips that Stein and I work together on, down in Antarctica and in the Arctic, and for your listeners and for you too, maybe is, down in Antarctica is where the penguins are. And then up in the Arctic in the north is where the polar bears are. They don't coexist together. Regardless of what all those Hallmark Christmas cards show you, Santa Claus hanging out with polar bears and penguins.
Coca-Cola.
It is Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola can. But in both those environments, you're traveling on glaciers, so you're using ropes to travel safely on glaciers for the crevasse hazard of falling into a crevasse and opening in the glacier. So you're using the rescue skills. If someone were to fall into a glacier, or into a crevasse, or you had to rescue someone out or extract yourself out, extricate yourself out of a crevasse. All of those climbing skills really come in handy there. And I see it sometimes with some of the guides that are just skiers, that the rope work stuff is still, it's a little bit more mysterious to them. Whereas when you're handling ropes all summer long, and then in wintertime, you go back to using ropes for that sort of technical travel. The two really mesh well in that environment. I've found. So I encourage all my ski friends and ski guide friends, and they've all got training, and we do trainings on all of these trips together. But I do encourage them, like, just the climbing, just playing with ropes. It's like anything, you get better by doing it. You just tying knots with the rope, using the rope, coiling the rope, just the simple parts of dealing with that part of climbing transfers over to the type of skiing we've been doing.
Yeah. I got to do more of that.
Are you you're still pretty new at it?
Well, no, I mean, I guess relative to Todd, for sure.
Yeah.
And relative to a lot of the other guides, absolutely. I have a lot of work to do. But that's why you make movies about people who inspire you and are mentors, and then they hang out with you more.
Yeah, exactly. What you both get to travel to these places all of the time that people write down on their bucket lists, and like they want to go to. It's like their number one travel. Like you think about Norway and the Arctic and like all these places. Is that stuff normalized for you yet, or is it still like every time you go? Are you still in awe of these places, or is it just very regular at this point?
Todd?
Huh?
Absolutely not. No, it's beautiful. For me, I mean, I'm still like pretty novice into the whole thing. Although I think I've spent like almost a full year on Svalbard. I love that island more than anything, but it's all so surreal. And like, I mean, it's like Todd or Doug or one of the guys, they have an amazing quote that you tell everyone that goes to Antarctica. It's like, you can't compare anywhere to that place. Like nowhere on earth compares to Antarctica. It's just, every time you're there, it's unbelievable, like jaw dropping, just spectacular. No, every time is a fresh moment.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. I look forward to, God, every single trip we do. I'm anticipating, looking forward to it. The only thing that maybe gets a little better is just knowing exactly what to pack, knowing what the weather's like, what the snow's like, what skis, that stuff. But I always tell people, I'm like, gosh, if I had millions of dollars to just do, the money was no object. These are the trips I would be going on. I would go to Antarctica every year with ice axe, and I would go probably up to Svalbard, Norway, Greenland, some of those trips as well. I just love that environment. And to Stein's point, the Antarctica trip in particular, you're on a big old ship with warm bed, hot meals. No one, people might compare, Norway's a lot like Greenland, or Greenland's like, or Europe reminds me a lot of the Sierras. No one ever says, hey, Alaska reminds me of Antarctica. No one says, this place reminds me of Antarctica. There's nowhere else. It's like skiing on the, freaking moon or something.
Yeah.
I've said for a long time, and I'm pretty sure this is accurate. You can have your fact checker, Jamie, check it.
In the background.
Yeah, have Jamie check this. I think more people have summited Mount Everest than have skied in Antarctica.
No shit.
I've heard that too. I think that's a fact for sure.
Yeah.
I don't think people think about it. I don't think people about skiing in Antarctica. Like, I don't think it, like, that association isn't there. And it's also, I'm sure, distance, ease of access, and you guys obviously know more than me about that aspect of it, but it's like, it doesn't seem easy to get to. You know what I mean?
It's not.
Yeah. So what does that travel look like?
Todd, that's all you.
I'll be like, from now on, I'm just going to direct and switch back forward, I think.
Yeah. No, you go first. Yeah. It's getting to Antarctica. You're spot on, Adam. Like to get there is probably about as far as you can go from, say, United States. We of course live here in Lake Tahoe, California. You travel. I typically fly into somewhere in Texas, and then from there to Buenos Aires, Argentina. And then from Buenos Aires, it feels like, I always feel like, Stein, you probably would agree. I feel like I get there, which is a lot of travel. You're down way southern part of South America. And I'm like, okay, that wasn't that bad. Then you get on almost another 4-hour flight to get all the way down to Ushuaia, which is the very tip, Tierra del Fuego of Argentina. And then from there, you get a 2-day ship ride across the Drake Passage, which is notoriously the most gnarliest, crossing in all, 7 seas. I mean, it's notorious, the Drake Passage. So yeah, to get there, it does take a lot. I think a lot of people, also to your point of not thinking about Antarctica, I think a lot of people think of those science research bases, stations that are down there, that are more on the main continent. But there's a big little finger, a peninsula that sticks out of Antarctica up towards South America. And that peninsula is where we take the ship to. And it's very mountainous. And those mountains go straight from anywhere, maybe around 3,000 meters. Mount St. Francis is like the biggest one. But they average, say, around 1,000 meters, but right out of the ocean. So it's very unique to be able to, one, live on a ship, then take a Zodiac to your ski destination, skin or cramp on up a peak, and then ski right back down to the ocean where there's penguins and seals and whales. It's incredibly unique.
Yeah. What's the first time experience for people like? I mean, this is for Stein probably. Like when you watch these people that have these experiences for the very first time down there, like what is that reaction? And maybe what is your reaction the first time you were down there? Like that, I think when people have these first experiences in places like this, they just don't know what to do with themselves, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, I guess like speaking from like my first experience down there was, I had no idea really what to expect. Doug Staup, the founder of ISACs, he's pretty nonchalant when he tells people what to expect too. Cause like, it's like, I mean, you have a guy who's done, he's skiing to the South Pole currently, but he's done all these crazy adventures. He's like, you'll be totally fine. It's actually the first time I went up to Svalbard, Norway. I've never been there in my entire life. And he's like, yeah, you can guide this film crew. You'll be totally fine. I'm like, what? Like, I've never been there. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah, just follow Yellow Brick Road. I'm like, what are you talking about?
And by the way, here's a rifle to take with you, son.
Exactly. Like, yeah, there's polar bears. Like, yeah, just don't get caught by Cecilman, because I think you need a permit or something like that. I'm like, what? And like, it ended up being totally fine in the end. But like, coming to Antarctica was like, kind of like it was that like 8 months later, he's like, yeah, no, it's totally fine. Like, you think it's gonna be a freezing cold, but he's like, no, it's really not that bad. It's like the whatever, the ozone layer. I don't know what. I'm not really that. Don't know much about that, but like it's crazy how like you always think that Antarctica is like, it is the coldest, highest, driest place in the world. But you think it's just gonna be absolutely freezing. But Doug is like, yeah, no, it's gonna be totally fine. You get down there. Honestly, it was jaw-dropping, just the scope. Everything is small. Like every single thing that you look at is just tiny. Like any photo is like, it just like, you kind of are mesmerized by the landscape. There's so much ice. The blues are like the most surreal blues that you've ever seen in your life. Just like sparkling colors, the snow, ice. Like when you have this next, like a leopard seal swimming next to you, penguins jumping out of the water. Penguins are just like the most like ridiculous animals on earth. Just like walk straight up to you. Don't really like, they're just curious, and they have like their only predators, like what is it, a skua and like an albatross, and then the leopard seal. But other than that, they're just kind of like going along their day. It's like it's absurd. But like when I was down there, and anytime, like even these last couple trips, and like it was like my girlfriend's first time down there too. They're just like blown away by just the scale of everything. It just doesn't make sense. Like you just look like, oh, I want to just ski. Let's go ski over there. That looks like kind of a nice little pitch. Let's go ski there. And like, that would take like 8 hours to get there. And it's like, it just doesn't make sense. But it just, I don't know. It's, as Todd mentioned, nowhere really compares. And I think the scale and the wildlife and just like the uniqueness of the wildlife are absolutely unreal. But I also think the people really make the trip like that much better. It's the people, and it's like a good après community. I once asked the bartender a couple years ago, like, of every trip that goes down to Antarctica, who like what's like our bar tab kind of stack up next to the other ones? and he's like, just like laughed, like kind of exactly what you guys just did, and just was like, he's like, you guys drink 10 times more. So it's a lot of fun too. We win. Champions.
We're number one.
What a win. What a huge win.
We're number one.
Todd, being down there, like, what do you at this point, how does it feel? Like I feel like, and how does the work, like, what does the work look like for you guys when you're down on these expeditions? Like, what exactly are you guys doing? What is your responsibility on those trips? And like, as you're going through, I don't know, just kind of talk to me about the feeling of the trip overall, because I think that's one of the things that people look forward to the most when they hear stories about these places, is they never get any context, they never get any detail.
Yeah, Stein kind of touched on it. I can remember people telling me, "Oh, it's so beautiful, so beautiful." And I've been all over the world and been to some, what I thought were really beautiful, incredible places and experiences. So I was really curious the first time as well, to like, what could be so amazing, so beautiful about this place? It doesn't have trees, it doesn't have anything but snow and ice and water, and it is. It's surreal when it's still, to me, to this day, surreal when I'm there. I'm standing there with someone, working, talking, and I'm just looking out across the ocean or across icebergs or across this beautiful, patch of snow we're going to ski, and just in awe that I'm actually in this place. So the feeling, to me, still to this day, is it's just absolutely surreal. I think of all the different summits around the world that I've been able to get to, whether it's the top of a cool sport climb in Thailand where you're looking down on the ocean, or in Pakistan where you're up at 6,000 meters and can look across the Karakoram range. I think to be on just any summit in a place like Antarctica on a day that's clear skies, and you're surrounded by so much water with icebergs in it, is still probably one of, I think, the most unique, coolest summits, of just sitting up there, just where it felt so surreal. Like, am I just really here? And you think about, I love to, wherever I am on the globe, especially there, think about where you are on the planet and think, God, I am on the bottom of the planet right now. It's so unique. I like that Google Earth, the zoom in, and I my brain kind of works like that now, thanks to Google Earth, where it's like, oh my God, this is where I am in the whole planet of the Earth. I'm on the bottom of the planet, on top of this summit, surrounded by all this water. And as far as the work goes, it's by far, unquestionably, without any doubt, the best job, the best work I've ever had in my life. It has all the normal stuff that a mountain guide does, in terms of just mitigating the risk and planning the day, the route planning, the route setting, where you're going to go, communicating to the clients, taking care of the clients, making sure they have the proper equipment. But and all the same hazards that you have in the mountains, whether it's the glacier concerns with crevasses, uncontrolled fall, avalanche, all of those things. But then you add in this whole maritime component to this mountain thing that's just so unique, to be able to add in that, where you're living on a ship, you're disembarking from a ship. Sometimes the waves are going like this, at the gangway, where you're loading up a Zodiac, getting clients into the Zodiac, loading the skis, the backpacks, the clients, getting to shore. Before we take the clients to shore, we have a guide meeting very early in the morning, usually around 6 a.m. in the morning. We have a guide meeting and discuss the day, where we are, location, all that stuff, and kind of go over different landing sites where we're going to land people in the Zodiacs. There might be landing site A, B, C, maybe even a landing site D. And then we'll have different guys that'll go out there very early and then prepare these sites, because one of the challenges there is you have these big glacial fronts that just meet the water, and they can be several hundred feet tall. So of course you can't access from there. We've, over the years now, found these different landings where it's a nice snow ramp that comes down to the water. And so from there you can, start skinning up or cramponing up. But right at the water's edge, depending on tide, you have to prepare these landings, sometimes with a rope, so people can get out of the boat and not fall into the ocean with all their ski equipment on. It's very, very unique in that sense. And then it's one of the few places too that I've been out skiing where you get a call from the radio from the ship saying, hey, the winds have shifted and now the sea ice is coming in. And everybody have to bring all the guests, turn around, immediately start coming back to the ship. We've had that before, where the ship's in a bay and all the sea ices, say, maybe on the oh God, what's it called? What's it, the right and left on a ship, Stein?
Port and starboard.
Port and starboard. I always forget. Once I get on the ship, I get it, but I always forget. I don't know why they just don't say left and right.
Seems like
It's really silly.
Yeah.
I'm always like left side, right side. But all the ice is on, say, the starboard side, and then the wind shifts and it pushes it to the port side, which is the exit out of the bay.
Right.
So there's a potential for the ship to get stuck. It's kind of cool. Hey, everybody, we got to start hustling back, and the Zodiacs are coming in, and you feel like a bunch of Navy SEALs on vacation. You're just living on this ship, cruising around in Zodiacs, having these big adventures. It's just spectacular.
It's hilarious that would be somebody else freaking out, and you're like, yeah, it's kind of fun. You get to be in it. Like, it's like people have to be panicking.
Well, and Stein will tell you that's one of my big ones. Is I'm always like, never panic. The more panicky it gets, I try to and focus on just trying to be calm. If it's one thing I've learned is that to just be that calm person, that calm voice of reason is what a lot of people need sometimes, just to calm themselves down.
Yeah.
Todd has these 3 nevers: never complain, never give up, and never waste a day. And those actually, he has he has an amazing presentation, and also even in the crux, it's kind of one of those through lines, never waste a day with his daughter.
Yeah.
But it's there's so many times in life, on projects and whatnot, where it's just God, this kind of sucks. But a lot of other people around you on the team might also be suffering. So it's just kind of just don't be the person to complain. So
yeah.
I definitely pulled that from Todd for sure.
You got that in the back of your head every time you're about to complain.
For sure. Don't complain. Todd would slap you.
I love that.
I'll be doing stuff sometimes with my daughter, and she'll be like, "Daddy, are you complaining?" I said, No. I was just pointing out. I was just pointing out that my feet are totally wet. I'm not complaining about it. Just I'm fine. And it's good. It keeps you in check.
Just
keeps
noticing.
you in check.
Do you still have that cussing jar?
No, the cussing jar got put away. I think it just overfilled, or it broke or something, just out of so many swear words.
What's the clientele like on these trips? I'm sure there's many of them that are great. I'm sure people have a certain thing in their head, but I'm you're kind of going into a situation that I don't know how educated people are about what they're getting into. And maybe they are, maybe they're not, but is there a vetting process for this kind of thing? Or is it just you get whoever wants to sign up for these expeditions?
I would say, I think it's one of the really unique things about IceX is Doug is just, come on. Oh, I've only skied a few days. That's fine. You can come down there and, your guide can teach you how to ski on the glacier. And I've seen that. I've seen it and it's true. You can learn to, whatever slope angle you're going to ski on, if it's 15 degrees to learn, 20 degrees, you can do that in Antarctica. You could do it, at Vail Resort, you can do it either place. And at the same time, I've seen people like Seth Morrison, just money out of his own pocket to come on that trip to go ski in Antarctica. So we get everything from the pros that we've all heard of that you get to meet on the trip, to people that even spouses, that the other spouse is there to ski or snowboard, and the other spouse is there to maybe just do a little cross country ski and some snowshoeing. So it's incredibly organic how it all shifts out, and maybe the groups change a little bit. Hey, Stein, I have a guy who's a little bit more aggressive than the rest of my crew, and he's thinking maybe he wants to do more vertical. How your guys looking? I have one guy that's maybe a little slow and intimidated. Let's switch today. And all of a sudden, I take Stein's guy and we switch out, and you get this good group dynamic. The key is just making sure that the clients are getting what they want. But I would say that we've had young kids. People have brought kids maybe as young as maybe 11 or 12.
No way. That's awesome.
And then
this year, actually, the second trip, Todd, there was an 8-year-old.
Damn.
That's so insane.
Apparently, they broke a Guinness Book of World Records or something like that.
At 8, I would hope so. 8 years old.
Impressive.
Hopefully at 8 you still remember that trip.
I guess that's true too. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Imagine going back to school though. Imagine going back to whatever that is, first grade, and being like, "Yeah, I was in Antarctica last week." What a flex! Everybody else is at Disney World.
Yeah, I couldn't even imagine. That's crazy.
And then on the other end of the spectrum, I mean, I can remember my friend Stefan Palm had some clients from Sweden that were well into their 70s, skiing very mellow terrain. But why not? You know, they were hiking up slower and skiing mellower terrain. And I mean, Antarctica is definitely, in my opinion, when people say, what's the snow like? I always say it's the location. It's about where you're skiing. If the snow's good, that's great. If the snow's bad, it doesn't matter. If the snow's really bad, you're skiing, you know, stuff that's a little safer, a little lower angle, whatever. That's what the guide's job is. But it's one of those location. Just being there and skiing there is the experience, I think, for most of the guests in the end.
Yeah. I'm interrupting this conversation to tell you about some Nordic skis. We have made Nordic popular again. Technically, we don't have a Nordic sponsor, but if we did, it would be Fisher. They make the best Nordic product in the world, and there's no question that OTX stuff is insane. Stuff is so good. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go look at like the 2-pin clips on our page. It's like, what do we get? 3 million views or something like that between the cross-country content going on right now. But to be honest, no one gives a shit about cross-country. But what we do care about is the Ranger Series. Ranger Series is the best all-mountain ski that exists right now. It's super fun. It's versatile. It is playful enough, but it holds an extremely tight edge all the way through, and it is available now at your local retailers. So go get yourself a pair of Fisher Rangers today. Obviously, they make these babies from a 90 all the way to like a 116 in the big sticks, and a whole bunch of different sizes available. Completely, like, no gender specifications on these things. You just pick your color and you go skiing. So fishersports.com, or go to your local retailer, and you can actually find your local retailer at fishersports.com as well. Next, America's original hard cider is Woodchuck. Woodchuck makes the absolute best when it comes to getting a hard cider. If you're knocking them back and you want a gluten-free, tasty, light drinking product, it is from Woodchuck, okay? There's nothing else you should be trying. They have everything as usual. I will tell you some of the flavors, and that is amber, prosecco, mimosa, sangria, what is that? Blueberry snap, berry snap, Granny Smith, rosé, Bellini, Paloma, guava nuther, pumpkin, 802 all dry, and apple. There are first of all, go to the cidery. Go skiing at like Sugarbush or something like that. I know I told you to go ski Cannon, but in this particular instance, go to Sugarbush, go to Stowe, go to Meta River, and then finish your trip at the Woodchuck Cidery, Cider House. I keep calling it a cidery, but it's for sure a cider house. They also have cocktails right inside there. So Middlebury, Vermont, go check that out. Woodchuck.com for all the details, and available at your local liquor store. Must be 21 or older to consume this product. Cool. Back to the episode. I don't want to just talk about Antarctica here, but Norway right now seems like it's blowing up in terms of popularity for the general public. It's like the opposite of what what I said about Antarctica. It seems like there's a ton of films out right now. They're like, everybody seems like they're moving. Like, I've had 4 guests on in the past few months from Norway, or that just came back from a trip in Norway, or that just moved there. Like, it's all over the place. And I wonder why that is. And I just want to hear your guys' experience, experience. Yeah, whatever. Experience in Norway. Like, it sounds like that's a favorite place of yours, Stein. Like, what is that? It's in my head right now because Nikolai Schermer has a new film called Wavy 2 that's out right now. And like, it just I was watching it with a friend last night, and it's like the way that they showcase the skiing and the way that he showcases just the wildlife and the nature and that aspect of it is so insane. Like, it almost seems not real. So I have that kind of stuck in my brain right now.
Well, at first, I think if you got to hear a story, it's Todd's experience becoming a local in the world's most remote ghost town called Pyramid. That's a story Todd needs to share. In terms of Norway, I mean, gosh, you were in Longyearbyen this spring. It's crazy. They have like one of those skyscraper thing, not a skyscraper, but what are those giant towers called that build giant buildings? The Todd.
But like a crane, like a sky crane?
Geez, yeah. See, I had serious brain fart there. They had cranes everywhere in the town.
Oh, I don't even.
Northernmost town in the world had like a couple cranes there this year, and I was like, holy cow! The grocery store, they have all these placards saying no guns allowed inside the store, but now they all have self checkout. It's quite interesting. It's like, I mean, at least in Svalbard, Longyearbyen, it's changed a ton in the last 6 years. I mean, that's the one first time I ever went there was 2017, but you've been going there a lot longer than me. But I've just seen it since the pandemic. It just exploded.
Yeah, it's changed. It's changed a lot. And I mean, Stein, you might better speak to it more articulate than me, but Svalbard is like a sovereignty nation that's governed by Norway. So for me personally, Adam, I always think of like Norway, Tromsø, the Lingen Alps,
right,
those areas. And then I think of Svalbard, another 3 hours and 45-minute flight north to an isolated island, personally. But both, I think, to your point, have become really popular. To me, it seems like a no-brainer, and I'm not surprised, because to me, it seems like, it's, again, for us to fly there, it's a long flight. Ultimately, you get to Oslo, and then from Oslo, you go to Tromsø typically, and then to Longyearbyen to get there. But to me, it seems so obvious for Europeans, people in the EU, if your ski season goes till, like through March, in April is ideal for being in Norway. So you ski your ass off in you're going further north, you ski Norway throughout April, and it's so accessible, around that Tromsø area, just as an example.
Yeah.
And then into May, a short flight from there gets you up to Svalbard. And then from there, you're skiing well into, oftentimes into the beginning of June. So to me, that seems like one thing. I think it's gotten put on the map, kind of like you're saying, you've seen the movies, the people talking about it. But what a great way to extend your ski season.
Yeah. It's a great point.
Yeah.
Great point.
Yeah, for sure. It's one of those places that I think people look at and they're like, this is going on my list. Especially, like I said, lately, I feel like it's just become a destination on people's radar for one reason or the other. And again, I don't know what happened, but it just seems like since the pandemic that has it's completely blown up, because I think, I don't know, when I was growing up, I never thought about it, right? It was like, it's a place, it's beautiful, but it's like, I don't know, you think of it the same way you think of Switzerland. It's like, yeah, I want to go, but like, I don't really know why I need to go there. You know what I mean? Like I'm sure it's beautiful, but I don't know.
Everything in the town of Longyearbyen is like the northernmost blank, like northernmost bakery, northernmost brewery, northernmost nightclub. Like it's all northernmost. It's quite special and quite unique for sure.
Yeah. Todd, Stein said you have a story about being out there.
Yeah.
You talk about the uniform stuff?
Yeah. Well, I just to preface a little bit of this town. Like I was going out there with this film crew in 2017, and it's quite the snowmobile trek there, and we ended up entering. There's like these two Russians who occupy this like hotel, which is like mega Soviet Russian. I think
Ghost Town.
Ghost Town. Like it's like what was the year? I forgot exactly what year, but all of a sudden, like these ships roll up to this town, which was a coal mining for Russia. And all of a sudden these ships arrive like, hey, drop what you're doing, time to leave. And like literally like you take a tour and there's stuff in the kitchen that was like just left, like pots, like literally people just stopped what they're doing and just left and never came back. So we ended up going there, and I was wearing this jacket that said ISAC's Expeditions. And I walk in, and this one guy, I think his name was Sasha. Pretty sure it was Sasha. And he's like talking to me. And initially he like, obviously like I saw him like read the jacket, and he's like, Todd, he's like, Todd. And I'm like, yeah, like I know Todd. And then he proceeds to go walk, like take us up to this like hallway towards the room. And he has this like picture frame of Todd. And I'm like next to his bed. Like Todd
next to his bed.
But no, like literally this is a town that's more north than where, if you want to ski to the North Pole, you fly into Svalbard, Longyearbyen, and then fly to go do North Pole trips. Like you're a few hundred miles away from the North Pole. Like you're in the middle of nowhere. And this town is like literally the middle of nowhere. And it's like very, very Russian, like only
Yeah.
2 people live there. They don't see many people. And Todd made such an impact that yeah, he could. But I'm pretty sure he sleeps with a picture of Todd next to his bed. Like,
I think he does.
Oh my.
It's I think the town of Pyramiden is in the like National Geographic's top 3 ghost towns in the world.
Yeah.
Because it's just and when I think what it was it was a coal mining location, hard to even call it a town, location up there on Svalbard, that when the Soviet Union collapsed, the money stopped going in there. And that was the ships coming in going, hey, we're out, the Soviet Union's collapsing, and everybody pulled out. And like Stein said, there's freaking kettleballs just sitting in the gym right where they were left. It's amazing. Spoon and a bowl, half-eaten oatmeal. It's really cool. The grand piano is still just sitting in the theater, with just super thick dust on it. But I was going to go do one of the trips I was guiding there. Gosh, maybe 2015 or so. And I went through Slovenia first and did a couple presentations. We used to call them slideshows, like, coming up, but whatever, like multimedia presentations. Presentation I have called Never Complain, Never Give Up. And while I was there was all these crazy Finns, people from Finland that were partying. And one of them had this Soviet Union, like the full length, heavy wool jacket that goes down to like mid shin, with the red buttons and the stripes on the shoulder and the full, like, furry, the whole thing. And so like partying, I was like, that thing's so cool. Where'd you get it? He's like, yeah, I got it from the Soviets back in do you want it? And I was like, oh, I couldn't take it. Ultimately, he gives me this. It's super heavy because it's really thick and it's full length, fits perfect, has a red belt that has like red and gold in it that goes around the waist. Super cool, like great for like raves or winter parties. It's just super fun. Halloween. So I get this big ass jacket. It's all I can do to put it in all my ski gear with all the other stuff, ropes and carabiners and skis and ice axes. And I get all the way over there, and it's just this thing's just with me on the boat as I'm cruising around, doing the guiding thing. Well, we go to Pyramiden, and again, like Stein said, this place is super isolated. There's like 2 Russians, that Sasha, and then some other lady that wears like really super red lipstick. I just remember that. And so we had to literally take the boat up to sea ice, because the sea ice left all the way from Pyramiden out into the ocean. And from there, we docked the boat up to the sea ice with ice screws. And then we skinned, I don't know, like maybe like a half a mile to Pyramiden. But I put the suit on. I put the whole thing with the helmet. And of course, you have to carry a rifle. So I have like a 1940s, Mauser 30-06 rifle, old school. And I've got this total military uniform. And I come up. And at first, I think Sasha thinks that like the Russian military's come to like check on him or something.
Oh my God.
And then finally, I explain, we start talking, and we just end up having the funnest night. We take pictures together. I have the pictures I can send you if you need them for the
yes, 100%.
Yeah, the picture's fantastic. But then just to Stein's point, I come back a few years later, same thing. I come in there with a bunch of clients and friends. I haven't seen him since. It was fun for me. It wasn't that big of a story then. What made it super crazy was to come back and just the same thing to happen to Stein. He's like, I'm like, Sasha, do you remember me? And he's like, just wait 1 minute. I run to room real quick. And he runs upstairs and he comes down. Like Stein said, I keep picture right next to bed. On my bed, there's the next picture. And it's a picture of him and I like in the uniforms together, And I'm like, that's kind of creepy, but really cool.
Extremely flattering. A little creepy, but extremely flattering.
But you know what, Adam? I think the point, like on those type of stories, like Stein remembers that, I remember it, Sasha remembers it. Yeah. To this day, I could see Sasha in an airport anywhere in the world and we'd recognize each other. Is these amazing locations that we go to, whether it's Pyramiden and Svalbard, or the people and these connections, and those are the stories that to me resonate. I don't think from Stein or I you're going to hear a story of like, oh, this one day, Adam, you can't imagine the snow. The powder was a certain way, that whatever that's why we go out there. But in the end, the stories and the really amazing memories that last a lifetime are those connecting with people, the relationships, the funny parts of it like that. To me, that's that's what this journey has taken me through, that's most valuable and most memorable and most treasured beyond the locations or certainly the sport,
Yeah.
Just skiing, just climbing, the relationships and connection is incredible.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that all of us are involved in this industry, right? Like, or like in snow sports, in outdoor sports in general. It's like the community aspect of it, the places that you go, the people that you meet. It's almost like a little cliche, but that's what people remember. I was in Portillo a few years ago, and it's funny, like we had an amazing time, like skied great stuff, and it was like, it was a great trip. The thing I remember most is at the like little bar at the bot, like down below, I met this kid who was trying to we were just like, I forget who it was. Somebody in our group was just looking for pot. Like everybody was looking for weed. Like, and it was like down there, it's like you go to jail. This kid like goes out of his way. This kid that we met, like hardly spoke any English, like goes out of his way to like go into his car, hidden in his shoe, in a shoebox. He had like this little bag of chafe, and he was like, this is what, like, I'm sharing this with you. And then he got caught the next day. Went to jail, and then like, I swear to God, got out and then contacted us like on Instagram afterwards. It was like, I'm okay, I'm safe. I just like had to go away for a little while, but like everything's all good. And it's just like, we ended up seeing him like in Santiago at the airport, like on the way out basically. But it was like, it's that kind of stuff that you remember, like, because it's so bizarre and it just kind of happens when you're there.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's wild.
Those are the stories, right? It's funny, as you were saying that, I was thinking, like, obviously I think anybody that has a podcast like yourself, clearly, it's the first time we're meeting, but that's what you like, the human connection. I mean, and I'm sitting here right now thinking that, right, that's obvious. Like, I sensed it immediately, us talking for the first time, there's a connection, but somebody that hates people needs to come up with a podcast, because that would be a really funny podcast. The guy that just like has people on and just gives them a bunch of shit, just like is all irritated by them, would be a really funny one, because I don't think that's been done yet.
I'm sure there's someone out there that's just like doing it by accident, like is actually upset all the time. I don't know if anybody is doing it as a bit, but yeah, that would be hilarious. It's funny. You never know. Like, you never know who you're going to get. There's a lot of people, and we have 5 shows on the network now, and everybody kind of has their own different style of like the way that they interview and the way what they bring to the table. Sure. It's like Michelle Parker hosts a show on the network, and it's like the way that she interviews versus the way that I interview versus anybody else is completely different from each other. But it's like there's kind of benefits to all of it, but the goal at the end of it is that connection aspect, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it's beautiful. I personally, Stein keeps talking about or referencing, this presentation I do, and I just still am such a believer in storytelling. I think that art of storytelling, has been in our culture, going back to when we were cavemen, telling you about the saber-toothed, tiger that attacked me out of a tree and how I kicked his ass, and then it has a funny punchline at the end. Those stories are so good, whereas nowadays people pull out their phone and it's like, I hate being at a party when someone's like, oh, Adam, look at this video of this. I'm always like, get out of here. Tell me the story. I don't want to see the picture. Tell me what happened. Tell me what it felt like. Tell me what it smelled like in that avalanche. Tell me,
Tell me what it smelled like. God, I hope I never have to experience what the inside of an avalanche smells like. Yeah, it's true. And actually, okay, this is a good segue. Tell me a little bit about the Crux film. Like, whose idea was this? Obviously, it's based around Todd, but like, what's the story? Kind of tell people a little bit about this, because it's going to be available for people. It sounds like, hopefully. Hey,
Olive, get Daddy some more whiskey. Come here, get Daddy some more whiskey. I can't. I'm on a podcast right now. I can't. It's in the closet. Go get some. Come on.
Yes, I love you, Todd. You're great.
This is the best. I can't. I'm on a podcast right
now. Well, the Crux is about Todd's life, and from my perspective, it was actually the same trip you brought up, Michelle. The same trip that when Michelle and a crew were up in Svalbard on the sailboat, when Todd and I were sharing that bed.
Oh, no
kidding. So we really got to know, and again, just like learning more about Todd and the story, and really developing more of those, like trying, in these places, I mean, it's really unique because you have no service. You're off in the middle of nowhere. There's not even the opportunity to have Wi-Fi. Like you're sitting in a space totally connected and having to like, I mean, whether you like it or not, you're conversing with others and learning more about their story. So for me, it was like Todd was starting to share a lot more about this, and I was like very interested in learning to rock climb. And Todd's like, yeah, no, he's like, well, if you're ever out in the Myers, South Lake Tahoe area, I've developed all these routes and whatnot. And he started telling me about like essentially bringing his daughter Olive into the climbing scene, of whom is a much better climber than I am. And even when we were like, she's 8 years old out climbing me for sure. And but so like, I mean, I started learning more about, and it was like on that trip in Svalbard where I started learning a lot more about Todd and what he's done for the community. And when we got back, so that was like 2019. So yeah, just like within a year, we essentially kept talking. It was actually hilarious. He took me for a multi-pitch that summer, and like I'll just share the story because essentially, like I'm like really interested in learning more about climbing and like getting into it. Like I sport climb every now and then, but Todd takes me on a multi-pitch. We're sitting in his truck. That it's a morning climb, and he hands me this one of the pens with like weed whatever in it, and he's like you want to hit, and I'm like sure, and he's like yeah, just have it. So I'm like, I took a huge puff of this pen and then like started coughing obviously,
Yeah,
and
right.
like, and I hand it back to Todd. He's like, no, I don't smoke before climbing. I'm like, what? It's like I was just like, I was like, what? Like
what a level of peer
like,
pressure. Like, holy
I'm
shit.
and then Todd and I, like, I'm still like nurturing this relationship. I'm like, God, I have to look like, I have to be on it. I have to be like, I'm like trying to act as like professional as possible. He's like, come on. And I'm like, no. And then next, just like, no, I don't smoke before climbing. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I like already failed this test. And then like, meanwhile, we just start climbing, and the shoes I had were my buddy Eric's, which were like 3 sizes too small, and I'm like in absolute pain and agony, like pretty much like tearing up on this multi pitch. But I'm like, never complain. Like I'm literally with Todd. Like, so that was kind of a funny little scenario. But then like I mean, started just heading into the outdoors more with Todd and just hearing more about his story. And then he called me beginning of 2020 saying, hey, I'm going to go develop more routes out here, and we're together. He's been with Mammut for
Yeah.
a long time, and we've also been on the team as ambassadors, and we're trying to get more into like filming other ambassadors doing really cool things. And Todd called me and he's like, hey, I'm gonna go put up a few more routes out in South Lake Tahoe, like in the Myers area, if you'd like to come join and just even like see what the process is like. So we ended up like chatting more about it, and then I went out there and did some more climbing with Todd, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is insane. Like I was born and raised in Truckee, California, and like it's that climbing's out there for like that it's there, but I had never thought or grasped the idea that there were like individuals that were going out there and creating these routes, like looking at a rock face and being like, this is a great beginner to moderate pitch. So what was it, the 90s, Chris Mack, or like one of the hardest rock climbs in the world was in Lake Tahoe. And it was known for like really tough rock climbing, and don't want to give like the whole story away, but essentially Todd, after going on a trip to Europe, and he created this amazing community project, and he's climbing with his daughter, like his passion, and he's climbed. Todd can talk about all of the amazing first ascents he's done ascents he's done all over the world, like Pakistan, Peru. Like really looking through his archives at his house was like mind blowing. Looking at all these different routes and like the community spires, or now you call like Luther spires, and all these amazing things that he's done, but like doesn't really ever talk about. So it's kind of like those like hidden idols, those figures that are behind the scenes. And he's put up like over 200 plus routes in the South Lake Tahoe area, like totally like built this community around climbing. And even with his daughter, like it's an activity they do as a family. They climb together. They have their own systems going. Like I think Olive calls it lizard chasing rat. Like it's like super, super adorable. But it's from my perspective, and I'm 28, and I guess we started actually like putting together the pre-production when I was 25 actually. So I was like 25 years old learning so much about life and kind of that transition where a lot of athletes go through life and just like have to be the pinnacle of what you're doing and like pushing the limits, risk to get some of that sponsorship and all those different deals. And watching Todd's progression and then being able to be like, okay, I'm having a daughter. And with his wife Tara, and having like the most amazing thing happen and like continuing that family, but then being okay, what can I do with my family? And he ended up just like creating like this amazing community where we've climbed out there. It's amazing routes. So that was kind of my perspective into learning about Todd, and it was just like totally gripping, and it compelled me to be like, I want to learn more about this. And it was a project that I was like seriously interested in, and I learned so much about life personally. Like it was an eye-opening experience.
I love that. Todd, anything to add on your own on this film that came out about that is coming out or is out, I guess, about you? Like that's got to be a bit of a weird thing, right? It's like, even though you know Stein and like this is all great, it's got to be a little bit weird to have a project focused solely on you, and even furthermore on your daughter as well, in that relationship. So what was this all like from your perspective?
Yeah, it was strange at first. It certainly was extremely flattering that Stein, or anybody for that matter, was interested in the story. And I kept saying to Stein, I'm like, yeah, man, I'm not that climber. I'm not some crazy high level pro. And he's like, well, you've done lots of cool stuff. I'm like, yeah, but I don't. And he was like, but that's not what the story's about. And then I think once I kind of wrapped my mind around that, and it's one of the things that's been really, that I really appreciate so much about Mammut that I've worked with. Stein mentioned I've been a Mammut ambassador, I think, since about maybe 2011. It's really cool that a company like Mammut, and I'm not a Mammut athlete, I'm what they call an ambassador, that they believe in someone like me that's older, that's, kind of past like my prime, doing the hardest routes I'm going to do, or the hardest ski descent, whatever that is, but recognize that there's people out there that see a higher cause of maybe giving back to the community. Climbing or skiing for that matter can be really self-serving. You're just doing, I'm going to go do the hardest route I can. I'm working on this 514 climb. Well, you get it. And who benefits? It's really just for you. It doesn't really help anybody else. But in this chapter of my climbing, going out and developing these moderate routes has been incredibly rewarding for myself personally, because there's so many people in the community that like constantly, I go to the grocery store, Stein can tell you, I go out and I say, hey, thanks for those routes you put up. I took my daughter up that. Oh, I did my first lead there. Hey, I really enjoy that area. It was these areas that the climbing was, if you know climbing grades, 5.7, 8, 5.9, 5.10, kind of what's now considered more moderate climbing that's well protected, that just made it much more inclusive. That's such a buzzword these days, inclusivity. But that the intention was just that, hey, people want more of this type of climbing. So that part's been really rewarding to put my energy into it for other people. But I personally get so much out of it. I just love the fact, I love hearing these stories of people telling me that they're some of their first climbing experiences. And it's a perfect transition. We have a great climbing gym now in our community called Blue Granite, which is relatively new in the last, 4 or 5 years. But these climbing gyms, people learn to climb at a really high grade at the climbing gyms. It's very laboratory conditions. It's on a top rope and it's there and it's plastic. But then they want to transition to outside. It used to be most areas that in those beginner moderate areas, the spacing between the protection was really far. So the risk of falling. So it had just a different fear factor. There was when I got into climbing 30, 35 years ago, the risk tolerance was different in climbing. Whereas I think that's changing. I hope so. I feel like a lot of outdoor sports that maybe there has been a shift in our risk tolerance. I've lost a really high number of friends in the mountains through climbing and skiing, through accidents and avalanches and those type of things, that I do feel like now that maybe the pendulum shifted to a risk tolerance that's a little bit more sustainable in some of these sports. And this is just one of the avenues for that, to make it a little bit more sustainable, a little bit more inclusive. And those hard run out climbs, those dangerous ones, the stuff we did in Pakistan and Peru, a lot of those routes have never been repeated. They're still there for somebody to go do.
Yeah.
But this stuff's been really rewarding and just flattering and really an honor to have like a piece of my life kind of captured in this film that I'll have when I'm older. My daughter will have when she's older. To share it with my community was just a real honor. It is really flattering.
Yeah, I love that. It's funny. Like you're right. Inclusivity is like such a big buzzword right now. It's all anybody wants to talk about, and everybody wants to claim it. But it's like you're actually doing a thing like this that actually makes it. And I think it's funny. I talked to Vasu a few weeks ago, and I was just telling him like that word annoys the fuck out of me because people just like go out and they just say it about anything. It doesn't like mean anything. But I think that like what you're doing is the core meaning of that. And it's like, it's exactly like what I talked about in the beginning of this, where it's like people are scared of the idea of like they need somewhere to go. They want to do it outside because for me, I don't want to be in a climbing gym in the summer. I want to be outside. Right. But that gap is too far for me to figure out a lot of times. Right. So people stick to bouldering or they do whatever. And this is kind of what inclusivity should mean to most people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know what it is too, Adam, is it's interesting in climbing these routes that say, let's just talk about a route that has bolt protection, a bolt that's in the rock that you would clip then, and clip the rope into. If those bolts are really far apart, what happens to a climber, to all of us has happened, is you can make some moves and you get up to the bolt and you clip it and it feels safe. But then you're looking 20 feet up, 30 feet up to the next bolt, and you start making the moves and they're hard and you down climb, you make the moves, and then you just kind of go, it's just too hard for me to commit. It's just too far. I don't want to go that. I'm afraid of. But we tried to place the bolts in a way that you clip that one bolt that I mentioned. And then the next bolt, it's like a little carrot that's just out there like, oh, I can get up to that one. I don't know if I can do the whole climb, but I think I can get that next bolt. And you go up there, and you clip that one, and then you feel safe again.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can do the whole climb, but I can get the next bolt. Next thing you know, you're at the top, and it breeds confidence in people and climbers and helps them take it to the next phase.
Yeah. Another thing that I found quite interesting about the whole like progression of how like when was the first route that you put out? Like what year? You know,
like it ever
in Tahoe. In Tahoe.
In Tahoe is probably, I think, when I first moved out here. So I'm going to say like maybe 97.
Yeah, like it's really wild to hear Todd. Like there was like
98.
A bit of opposition too. Like as he was building some of the different routes, like there's a lot of people who are like, Tahoe had the hardest rock climbing like route in the world for a moment, a period of time. But then it's like kind of people are like, hey, don't. Like Todd was starting to put in these other like easier routes, and there's people, and Todd has a few stories of like these different folks who are like, hey, they like cutting his bolts down, saying it's too easy, and it's like you can't be putting up these beginner to moderate routes on these faces that should exclusively just be hard things that people should climb. So it's like there was some opposition to it, but on the greater good, like I mean, even a goal for this film is not only like a timepiece for Todd and his family, but I mean, a couple of generations down the road and whatnot, like as people like these routes are going to be here for a long, long, long time, if not forever, and that people will be able to use. And the Tahoe community is growing really, really, really quickly. But like like thousands of people are going to be climbing these routes. And it's kind of like for this film to kind of timestamp an individual who created all of these things for such like future generations of anyone, like whatever age, like from 4 years old to 80 years old. It's like, that's another big goal of this film, is to really timestamp those kind of local heroes who do it volunteer based. Like Todd's like, I'm not getting on the cover of Climbing magazine doing these routes. He's just like, it's volunteer. Like he's like an altruist.
I love that. Yeah. I can't see a reason why, like I kind of get it, but I also don't understand it at all, right? Why people would not want, like they're kind of protecting their own ego in a way. But other than that, I can't really think of a good reason why people are like, why they would be opposed to this kind of thing, right? Like it's funny. Gatekeeping is another word that gets thrown all the time out there right now. And it's like, that also kind of makes me annoyed because it's always like someone who is annoying saying it feels like. But there is this like, that is what it is at its core, right? Like that is what the the definition of it, right? By like, if you're to go in Webster's, like that is what it is, right? And I think there's a lot of value in just being like, look, like you might not love it, but this is for a lot of people for a long time. Like it's actually a really cool thing to do.
Yeah, there wasn't much resistance, but there was, and the resistance from the few was pretty stout. Like it was aggressive, and but your point to gatekeeping is exactly it. Things change, and Europe has kind of always been a few, I don't know, maybe a decade ahead of us in climbing and skiing and the progression of things. I got the influence from going over to Europe and seeing how many moderate areas there were when my daughter was young. I went to Chamonix thinking I wanted to go do all this rad stuff. And I was like, what am I going to do with a 3-year-old in Chamonix? Come to find out, they have routes that you can go do with a 3-year-old in Chamonix because they get it. These hardcore climbers have families and they want their kids to learn. They want to be able to do it safely. So yeah, it does timestamp a particular maybe transition in climbing with risk tolerance and accessibility.
Yeah. And in terms of like even some feedback that we've had, like it's played at Tahoe Adventure Film Festival, Coast Film Festival, New Zealand Mountain Film Festival, and then Intrepid Film Festival in Minnesota. But there's a lot of feedback that we've heard like privately, and it's a film that's not just for climbers. Like we've had quite a few family friends and friends that have just like watched the teaser or whatnot on YouTube or wherever they may have found it and been like, hey, I would like my kids, like my like, because climbing is so mainstream now, there's a lot of kids and families that are like, hey, my kids, like, I just want them to be in the outdoors or like a family, like becoming more of a family type bond or finding that like that activity they can bond together. There's a lot of families and kids and mostly like a lot of adults that are just like, hey, I just love to watch this with my son or daughter, to see like watching another parent and their kid at this, when we were filming, all of us 8 years old, and just like watching that dynamic with parents working together and doing an activity together in the outdoors and like being happy. So it's like, it's definitely climbing focused, but it's also like, there's been a lot of people who like watching all of like the free solos and all those other things that are just like totally like, I have literally no clue how to relate to this whatsoever. That there's a lot of people who are like, hey, this seems like I'd be like, can you please forward me the private link or something like that? I'd love to watch with my family. I'd love to just like see if they'd be interested in just trying it. So there's a lot of people who are outside of the climbing industry who think that it's like a nice little, like a conversation starter to show their families.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm very excited to watch it. I still haven't. I need to do the same thing and just get the private link from you. Like it's like, but it's a thing that was brought to my attention from Nash over at Mammoth, and it's like those are the kind of people that when they're like, oh yeah, this is a project worth spending some time on and worth talking about and like worth the watch, it's like you listen, right? And it's like talking to you guys, it seems like it's something that you guys are both very passionate about, and it's exciting for me, and I think people will be very excited to see it. And that's kind of my follow-up question to this is like, when and where are like people actually going to be able to watch it like in mass form, I guess?
The final distribution is TBD, but you can certainly follow. I mean, Mammoth's a big supporter of the film. So if to stay in touch, like we'll certainly keep you posted.
Yeah, please do.
But we will have a note here like coming up in the next like month or two of kind of like final. But following Todd is Tahoe Todd on Instagram or whatnot too. So just like staying in touch with Todd and Mammoth and you is a great way to find out where things are going to land.
Yeah. Sounds like Stein's still trying to get that Netflix check to
clear. Exactly. Someone sign it. Yeah.
Once that clears, I think we're good.
Netflix money.
It's funny too, though, Adam. Like your point about the mystery and fear of climbing. I was just thinking in the last couple of years, like real mainstream was Free Solo.
Yeah,
it won an Academy Award. Great film. I think, in my opinion, maybe one of the most incredible athletic accomplishments ever captured in the film. Like it's amazing. Yeah. That's incredible. Then we had The Alpinist. I don't know if you've seen The Alpinist.
Yep, sure have.
Another one that ends tragically. A great film, a great climber, incredible accomplishments up to his, death. So that also is very sad. And then another film, was it called Torn, Stein, with Alex Lowe's son? Was it?
Yeah, Torn.
Torn. Another film that also ended up kind of more mainstream, outside of the climbing communities, was another film that was, all three are very good films, tell an incredible story, but the risk in Free Solo, and then the tragedy of the other two, is heavy. It's heavy, and I know firsthand that weight and that heaviness that can come with accidents in the mountains. I think that's one of the things that makes this film so appealing to a more general audience. It's just happy climbing. It goes back into like when we were climbing harder stuff around the world and pushing the limits for ourselves. It wasn't anything like what Alex did or what Mark, Leclerc did in Alpinist, or even anything like what Alex Lowe did. Nothing like those guys were at the top. But this one has a happy ending. So, well, I don't know. Let's see what happens, Timmy.
Yeah, exactly.
But the end of the film, you're like, hey, that was really cool. It's uplifting. It's positive. It's in the right direction. It's giving back its community. And it's okay to not just have to take the highest risk to climb El Capitan without a rope, or to ice climb, without a rope, or to die tragically in the mountains, to have some sort of clarity. It's a good story that's just that's more relatable, I think, to the general population and people that don't climb or don't even understand what goes on in the mountains in terms of sports.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how the masses react to it, right? Because you mentioned some of those things that are heavy, or like the extreme athletic accomplishments. And honestly, I think the relatability aspect of it, since it's much higher here, will bring it to the forefront, where like people are actually trying to watch it at a higher level and at a more mainstream level. Because so many of these like extreme athletic achievements, like, not to downplay what Alex did, obviously, like, incredible film, but an outlier, like kind of an outlier in terms of like athletic accomplishment, making it mainstream. Because so many people do incredible shit, and then you look and you're like, this has 47 views, and you're like, nobody saw this, like it's okay that nobody saw it because it's not for that, but it's like that stuff doesn't always translate mainstream versus this type of thing. I think has the capability to. Right.
That's the goal.
That's the goal.
Certainly the goal.
I don't want to keep you guys too much longer. I have a question for Todd. Todd, what is all of these photos of you looking absurdly jacked? What part of life did this happen? Like, what is going on? Like, what happened during that time? I'm sure Joe will pop this up on the screen or something, because like, it's absurd looking, man.
I think you're referencing some photos, some images, some videos from the 1980s.
I sure am.
when in the 80s, I don't know, flat tops, cocaine, convertibles, and bodybuilding were all very, very popular. And I never had it. I never owned a convertible, but otherwise I did enjoy the 80s. Yeah, I competed in bodybuilding at a really high level in the 80s, and it's just awesome because I'm like a really comical person. I just see humor in everything, and it's so fun that I have that in my past. The Speedo and the oil and the muscles and the flat top and the tan, living in Muscle Beach. I mean, you can't make this shit up. Like, that was a chapter in my life that was just amazing. I mean, God, the stories there could go on for forever. There's a book to be written about that period of time.
Oh my God. Yeah. I was like, there's no way this is real. And then I was like, it is real. Holy shit. Like, this is crazy. It's funny. I tell people all the time, it's like, I don't really want to be that jacked, like always, but I would like to be that jacked for like 11 minutes. You know what I mean? Just to feel
it's awesome.
What that feeling is like to be that yoked.
It's a lot of work, I'll tell you.
I'm sure
a lot of work and discipline. It really is. It's funny. It's like anything, I guess, it's extreme like that.
Yeah.
All you see is the final product, and
right.
And in that one, it's funny. Certainly, it's funny. I remember like seeing was it VH1 was the music video channel. I remember they had like a I love the 80s.
Yeah.
And it was like, I love the 80s. And the logo that came up was a silhouette of a bodybuilder.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, see, that shit was popular then, man. That was it. It was in the 80s. Quit making fun of me, but bodybuilding was cool in the 80s.
I'm sure it was, man. Like, I think it's amazing. It is such a thing to have in your back pocket to like pull out at the dinner table or whatever and be like, look at how jacked I was. Like, this is so crazy. And what a transition. Like, what a transition from that to climbing and skiing and doing all this stuff. Like, that is a thing that you don't see very often.
No, not at all. And, you know, I mean, certainly one of the big takeaways was I you know, the one thing I did create, I learned a lot about nutrition. I learned a lot about exercise, but I definitely created like true, absolute discipline in my life that I apply to this day. You know what I mean? Like that part is amazing. That was the best part to come out of it. I certainly beat myself up on some level, but the discipline it takes for that kind of diet, that kind of training to get to that point is applicable every single day. You know, I do things all the time I don't feel like doing. I have great discipline in my life. Any of my friends will tell you that.
Yeah, I love that. Guys, I'm gonna let you go. I appreciate this very much. This was great. I shouldn't say actually because I kind of expected it to be, but
low expectations.
Where can be? Yeah, right. You just put them at the floor. Where can people find you guys on social? If people want to catch up with you, where can people find you? Like, tell the people this is your plug.
Well, my name is Todd Offenbacher, and I'm Todd Offenbacher on Facebook, and I'm Tahoe Todd on pretty much all the other channels, the Instagram, that sort of stuff. Tahoe Todd, 2 Ds, the first D is silent. And I live here in South Lake Tahoe. And Adam, I hope maybe at some point you come through town. I'd love to take you out climbing and
I would love that.
And show you just like a really fun way to just enjoy it.
I would love that. I'm in. Count me in 100%.
Right on. Open invitation.
Love that. Stein, where can people find you?
Yeah, no, my name's Stein Retzlaff, a little bit German, Scandinavian, but SteinRetzlaff, and that's pretty much at Stein Retzlaff across all channels, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all that.
I love that. Awesome.